Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Homesome podcast. Today with me here, I have Parton Scott. He is a chemical engineer and a researcher and a biochemist, and he is the founder of Upgraded Formulas. Normally on Homesome, we talk about the environment and well-being, anything that has to do with healthy homes. But we come at healthy homes from a holistic perspective, so it's all about healthy holistic homes. And let's picture it, everything that is under the roof of a healthy home, and you definitely have drawers full of good supplements if you do that. So with Parton today here, we're going to talk about supplements and what are the best supplements and what's basically wrong with the supplement industry. And I think that's where we should start. It's like, give us a big overview of the supplement industry, how it compares to, let's say, pharmaceuticals, and what's wrong in the supplement industry and what should people be looking out for.
I was fed up with both of those industries, and that's the reason why Upgraded Formulas exists today. And what Upgraded Formulas really is an answer to what I couldn't find. What didn't work for my mother is I was able to support her in making shifts in her health that ultimately improved her life as she got older. But she was already on medication, to speak to the pharmaceutical side. And as a doctor friend of mine, I've, many friends are the top doctors in the world, and they've done things like take our course for a hair test, for hair analysis, to understand, how do you interpret some of what we'll talk about later, which is really seeing your personality on a page and being able to actually improve it. So, but we can get to that later if you like. Really what happened was, I was able to help her, but ultimately not enough. So unfortunately, she passed in her late 60s. I was in my early 20s. We were very close as a family, and she was a very special woman and someone that if you met her, you would have just remembered meeting her. She was one of the, just very deep, very loving, very present. And I remember thinking, God, the world loses so much when our wisest die young. And, even beyond just like the love and the warmth that they can give someone, just beyond that, they can just literally help, save people time. They can help in so many ways and support in so many ways. The grandfather-grandmother dynamic, if you're lucky enough to have it, is so beautiful for supporting. I know you guys have a little one on the way too. So, being lucky enough to have support like that's beautiful. And it helps the whole ecosystem for stability. And pharmaceuticals played a role in that negatively, unfortunately. And this is just the truth of it, is that the toxicity of pharmaceuticals is something that the body has to overcome. And in addition to getting well. So to go back to what I was saying earlier, a really good doctor friend of mine said that, he realized in medical school that he was never going to get someone well using medication. And that is the mindset that unfortunately, it's very important that everyone understand, is that if you're relinquishing, if you're not holding on to your power and doing something with it and maintaining this sovereignty through approaches like what we'll talk about here, then you won't have a healthy home, a healthy lifestyle, and a healthy family. And there's no chance of it because it's chemically impossible.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard this idea as well that when you're doing something on a biochemical level, let's say you're introducing molecules that start certain processes, certain healing processes, that there's always a trade-off, or are there some could there be some pharmaceuticals that do not have side effects, or do all of them have side effects by definition?
As far as I'm aware, all have some sort of trade-off. It goes back to the energy is neither created nor destroyed concept. So there's some input, and unless it's providing, real value on its own, then no. What you're for example, SSRIs, which are mood controllers, they're working on a certain pathway, like the dopamine pathway, for example, or serotonin pathway. Then what you're doing there is just focusing on one channel and blocking the reuptake of, serotonin, or, you're modulating something. And that can work for a little while if someone's in a deeply traumatic place or something. But ultimately, we know now that, you really need the nutritional support to be able to feel the feelings, process it with someone, and ultimately process and digest it in the same way that you digest a meal.
I've come across this idea that there were studies looking into selective serotonin reuptake enhancers as opposed to inhibitors, and during trials they were just as effective as in treating depression as the inhibition of serotonin.
Yeah, I mean, serotonin makes us feel good. So, for example, what are other options there? Well, they're not patentable by a pharmaceutical company, but they're elements like what we're talking about and what I've developed for upgraded formulas, which is a way to get minerals to absorb in the body without requiring the digestive system to do work. So you could, most people have a broken digestive system. I realized that. I realized, my mother in her 60s had that issue. I realized I had deficiencies in my 20s from wrestling and other sports where you're limiting your intake, especially with wrestling, and you're making weight. You can't, eat as much, and your output's very high. And, it just caused my levels to be something like an unhealthy 80-year-old.
Because you're sweating a lot, you're drinking a lot, and the food's depleted from minerals anyway, right?
Exactly. The food, congratulations if you're listening to this podcast, you have deficiencies, and that also leads you to assimilating heavy metals more easily in the body. Because minerals play, something I say often, minerals play offense and defense. And what I mean by minerals, things like magnesium, manganese, I would say calcium, but most people have way too much calcium, and I never recommend calcium supplementation unless we look at someone's hair test, which we can ship around the world, and we ship to many countries, and see that they actually do need that. Same thing with iron, which we could talk about later. But the elements, to go back to this previous example you were talking on, when you're actually putting, let's say, potassium or magnesium or chromium into the system, those nutrients activate enzymatic pathways that are shortcuts in the body. It's like running little bits of code that, as you know, like you can enter a prompt and it can save you pages and pages worth of code just with a couple of keystrokes, and it's beautiful. And that's exactly what's happening with minerals.
I used to have...
So that's a net positive to the system versus a toxicity with drugs.
Yeah.
And drugs are just modulating. It's just trying to modulate. And, when we have traumatic experiences in our life, our needs only increase because, as I say often, we're redlining at our desks. So we're sitting here, and the version of you that didn't have trauma, whether it was at 6 and it was experiencing something horrific, first or second hand, or it was yesterday, or it was just the lack of. Trauma can be the lack of. So not just like experiencing something violent in some way, or but also receiving a lack of. So a lack of care. Cried as a kid, even at a nonverbal place, and then no one came, and you felt like you're going to suffocate, and you're genuinely scared. And maybe that didn't make sense, but it happened.
2 days ago, Miriam was just having a conversation with Bini, and she is a breathing expert, but she also used to be I think a birthing expert or a midwife, and she was there for the first water birth in America, and they were talking about as well, like traumatic birth, how the system is kind of set up that when you give birth in a hospital, it's very hard not to have a traumatic birth for the child. You have to work very, very hard. But coming back to the pharmaceuticals versus, let's say, not pharmaceuticals, I don't know if you were there during my presentation. Gotham gave an intro as well.
Yeah, caught some of it, and then I had a call, yeah.
In 2015, I was also diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And that's when I declined the conventional approach to these immunosuppressants, because I realized they're only masking the symptoms and not treating the underlying cause. Fortunately for me, it worked out, but I went the other way and started treating myself and trying to address the root cause. Of course, it was like a difficult, long road, and I didn't get better until many years. but I'm very happy like going down that road. And I completely understand what you're saying with these, like the problem with the pharmaceutical industry and problem with the pharmaceuticals per se.
Yeah. And I believe struggles like that are given to us as an opportunity to be here helping others.
Exactly, because I wouldn't, even though it was a very hard experience and a hard journey, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't skip it now after having been through with it.
We wouldn't be sitting here today.
Exactly.
In a very real sense. We wouldn't be, because you wouldn't have the interest, you wouldn't have the knowledge that you have. You would have gone somewhere else with your attention.
Definitely.
And yeah, all I had to do was show up today, and you've done everything, in the same way that you used to have audio video background, and that makes all these skills blending together, makes it seamless. So thanks.
And thanks for coming over, and I'm happy to share all this knowledge and to take the knowledge out of you and share it with the audience.
Yeah.
But then going back to the supplement industry, because supplements are not as clear cut either, because there's a lot of problems with the supplements.
Sure.
And maybe you can open up because you own a supplement company, maybe you can open up the back doors to the audience a bit. Like, tell me what's wrong with the supplement industry.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to. So something that we do that very few companies do is we third-party test, which means we test with an entity that has no interest in our business whatsoever, every single batch of every single product made. And we do that because, well, I think it's the most ethical thing to do. And also because I use all the products all the time. Like literally, I'll probably use at least 10 products a day, because I like to be optimal. Now, could you get by with less? Probably, yeah. But based on my hair test results, and people will ask, what do you take? You're healthy, your skin looks good, you have energy, et cetera, et cetera. And then, just on Vision's podcast, on Mind Valley, he was mentioning a couple of things that people will be together and they'll come up and say. And really, it always comes back to this phrase that we trademarked, which is test, don't guess. And this kind of fits into that question too. So testing and not guessing is part of understanding the map. But, I think a lot of people think about quality and they're concerned, like, is it good quality? And does it have what it says it has in it? And that used to not be the case. I think now, for the most part, I would say 80% of brands have, pretty, like, the quality is there, or the sourcing is there, the amounts of something is there. And then there's maybe, 70% of brands that reach that mark. 30% of brands also have good purity. I would think of quality as amount. You can think of that as quality or purity. But, if you have 300 milligrams of alpha GPC, should you, if you test it, do you have that amount of that thing? And then beyond that, it's like, you could say purity. Is it sourced well? What's the highest sourcing? But beyond that, I realize that also won't get people well if they're only absorbing a bit of that. So with traditional manufacturing methods, everything we've ever been able to test in the lab, we've seen less than 30% absorption. So that isn't enough to reverse deficiencies that we're seeing in the hair test or any other test. Most blood, you're only seeing extreme deficiencies that have been around for a decade in most cases.
Let's come back to that.
Yeah.
There's two things that I want to address there. But first, talking about the third-party testing that you mentioned, because as far as I know, there's only one factory in Europe that actually produces vitamin C by themselves. If we're talking about ascorbic acid, I think it's somewhere in Scotland. And all other ascorbic acid ultimately comes from China. But in terms of manufacturing, China is this big black box that nobody knows what's going on there. So when you buy bulk these things, you have to test them yourself constantly, because like one of my good friends also owns a supplement company, and he says that he's had to send things back so many times because these things do not just match up.
Yeah, we don't do any ingredients from China because of heavy metal concerns as well. So just in general, nothing comes from China. We don't do any vitamin C either in any of our products. So that's at least at this moment. Not that we won't at some point, but if we did, it wouldn't come from China as well. There's just, it's too much of a black box, and I would be taking this. Any product that we're developing, I'm taking it at least some of the time, and also if there's no way for us to improve on a product that exists in the market, we're also not doing it.
And I've had these, let's say, entrepreneurial people approach me, say that, hey, longevity is a great thing. We want to start creating supplements around longevity. They don't know anything about it, and it's like, help me out. Let's do something together. And the plan was to order something bulk from Alibaba,
Yeah.
Bada bing, bada boom, put a patch on it and sell it as longevity supplements.
Right.
But I guess there's a lot of that in the market.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's hard to codify for people what I've been able to learn over 20 years. I mean, I literally started studying or thinking about nutrition at like 7 because of wrestling. My dad was a coach earlier in his life.
How long did you wrestle for?
I wrestled all through high school, so about 10 or 11 years.
Classical American wrestling, or like Greek-Roman, or
classical American, and I was just so burned out. I didn't have interest in wrestling in college, but
Do you still do it?
Jiu-jitsu for a while was a good substitute.
I train as well.
Yeah, it's amazing for, I think, just getting healthy aggression, confidence, and also humility. Because
definitely.
you're constantly, even if you're great. I remember thinking I wasn't that great at jiu-jitsu, or not even very good, because the friend of mine that I rolled with all the time went and won nationals. And he was about my age now, and he just had the maturity that I didn't have as a 19-year-old. So I was strong and had endurance and technique, but
I lacked the aggression necessary for competition until I did compete. But sidetracking here from the supplement talk, have you trained in Estonia?
No, I haven't.
How long are you going to be here still?
I think Monday. Yeah.
Okay, maybe you can try out, because right now it's only open mats anyway, but the Estum gym here, highly recommended.
Oh, cool.
Go give it a try.
Okay.
We can talk after the podcast, and let's get back to track now.
Yeah, totally.
But
all these things cause nutrient deficiencies.
Yeah.
So in some way, this is very related. So if you're listening to this and you're an athlete, or even if you're a mom and you're listening to this, you're still an athlete, you're still bending down to pick up the kids, and you're lifting and you're moving and you're stressed and you're trying to do more than you can often, and all of this it plays a role. So I gave a talk at Mind Valley on how nutrition becomes personality, and it's something that we see a lot in hair. And I put out a course about 2 years ago that I'd studied for 12 years at least, this hair testing, and I just found that there are so many questions that we kept trying to answer again and again, and so many people want to learn the process. And it's really interesting because you can see things like bipolar, or what would be labeled manic, or bipolar in hair. And then the good news that's very inspiring is that you can reverse that over time.
Okay.
By increasing certain levels of things like potassium and sodium. And we see a lot of people that eat a very clean diet that's very free of sodium. They're at risk for things like this, because we were told about 12 years ago that salt's bad suddenly, and no, it's not. You need it and it's essential, and we would die without it. And
But there's one more quick side question here. I do want to ask about the bloods, but I used to import and resell reverse osmosis units. And these units had like a special mineral insert here, fourth filter, but I realized that it's more of a gimmick than actual reality. And there's a lot of this going around in the functional space that people were asking me as well, is like, if you drink a reverse osmosis water, is it going to deplete your minerals? And my reply always was that I've heard that a lot. I've never seen any studies, and drinking water just depletes your minerals anyway. Right? So does reverse osmosis play into there? Does it deplete you in any way more, or?
Question. Yes, it does.
It does.
It does, because it's like a vacuum. It's like drinking a vacuum. So the body has to constantly change the pH and structure the water, which takes energy, which takes nutrients. So all elements. The one phrase that I coined is periodic law. to describe the severe or the incredible importance of what we're talking about, which is in inviolable law, a law that's always present, which is everything we're talking about with elements. And in the case of RO, reverse osmosis, we're stripping the water of all the life. So we're removing toxicity, which is amazing. You really want that. You really want to strip all the estrogens and all the terrible things. Women are on birth control pills so much, and then they go to the restroom, and then they pee it out, and then everyone's drinking that, men and women, and the polarity is being reduced just from that alone. Forget everything else.
There's so many xenoestrogens.
Yeah, absolutely. And then plastics and also heavy metals are really, in my opinion, the worst offenders. And because they get in the bones, if the minerals aren't there, they start activating processes they shouldn't activate, and then they're there for a long time, unfortunately, for most people. So, and you can use this process we're talking about with minerals to get those out over time, and get healthier.
But does the reverse osmosis?
But we need to be putting minerals back into the water.
Okay, do you have to then put it in the water that you're drinking,
Yes.
or can you supplement later on with food or something as well?
I really like putting it in that water before I drink it because it structures it. So I give it time.
Should you do it every time?
Yeah.
Every drink?
Every drink.
That's
So
our water.
I put a big pitcher to save time, and I fill it up like twice a day. And it goes from a reverse osmosis machine, which strips all that stuff out. And then we go into a hydrogen machine, and then it comes into my pitcher.
Oh, you molecularize it?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. So I do that.
Is that a correct term, molecularizing? No. H2, what is it?
Yeah,
Molecular
I guess
hydrogen.
So we're adding hydrogen to the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So you do that for all the water that you drink?
yeah, because it kills H. pylori, and there's about 1,200 studies. They're well cited on the benefits of hydrogen water. I find tablets to be difficult to drink, and I don't like the taste. But hydrogen,
they make it like kind of it's elemental magnesium as well in the tablets.
Yeah.
So is there any danger there when you're consuming? Okay.
That's okay. No, that's fine.
This like small one, but it's always so annoying when you want to drink water. You have to wait like 7 minutes for the generator to do its job. So it stopped it because it was like more like a plaything for me.
Right. When I'm at home, though, it's easy to use that machine. And I feel more energy too from it because it is donating energy to the body. So what I'm doing there is I'm using upgraded charge or our trace minerals product. Usually charge because it has some flavor, and we extract it from lime peel, so it's healthy.
Because the way I was seeing things, and then
structure it,
and then I would like you to refute it. Then is that during the municipal purification process, the trace minerals are all taken out and killed anyway.
Yeah.
So what are you left with? Some minerals and mostly the harmful stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
But
usually too much calcium and then chlorine and fluoride. Yeah.
Exactly. But then you still want to add something back. Could it be just sodium as well? Would that be enough or no?
Salt with good trace minerals would work. Yeah, if you could do really good quality sea salt, that's something I do. And then I like to flavor it. So I'll use things like upgraded charge. You could use another electrolyte, but again, absorbing it's important.
Because personally, I haven't been
adding... It does
adding...
structure it, though. Yeah. And then I'll drop, I'll have sometimes I'll have it in natural light. Sometimes I'll have it... red light nearby. Like it's cool. You can do all sorts of things.
I have one of these Flasca bottles that causes a vortex when you're walking around. So water vortex and structures itself.
Exactly.
And everyone thinks it's a vodka bottle every time I show up to training.
Right. So that's great. And then just salting the water will structure it, letting it dissolve.
Because I haven't been doing like every single glass that I do, but when at least I drink like a liter of mineral water where I add minerals in a day, and I use Quinton. You're familiar with Quinton?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's okay. The dose of it though is just so small. That's what I noticed.
Because I know there's a high isotonic and a high what is it? Hypertonic, yeah.
Yeah. It's I think that my only problem there is that I would never rely on it because it just isn't it's expensive. I think you're paying a lot for packaging there. Their unique packaging style, which seems nifty and cool, but it's just not enough
Yeah.
nutrients. Ultimately, I mean, you look at the dose, like that dose isn't magically going to be 100 times that, which is what you would need in a day.
Yeah. But what about
if that makes sense, it's just not a big dose.
Yeah, it makes sense. But what about, are you familiar with peptides and peptide therapy?
Yeah.
So I've done subcutaneous administrations of peptides using the Quinton isotonic.
Yeah, that's fine.
And is that like a better mineral absorption then? And in that case, does the Quinton benefit it in any way?
I don't think so. Because what happens when you're doing that is you're just getting it into the body pretty quickly, where it's going to mix with interstitial fluid and it'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So going back to the hair testing versus blood testing, you mentioned that hair testing is more valuable. And is it because blood testing doesn't show you good results, or that the reference values for bloods is all messed up anyway?
Well, that's a great point as well. The reference values for blood are messed up. It was taken from a sick population.
Exactly. So for the viewer, the way, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and the way reference values for bloods, so you go to the doctor, you want to know if you're healthy or not, let's say your thyroid, and they give you a reference value. If you're in the green, the yellow, the red zone, basically, just illustratively. So what they do is they take the population average and they add a statistical trickery there, widen it by 2 standard deviations. But the problem is that the population average is not healthy, unfortunately. And then you add 2 standard deviations. So within the green ranges of the blood tests, there is already a state of disease.
Yeah, there are on that. So that's definitely true. And then there are functional ranges that they've reestablished or attempted to reestablish,
like optimal DX, right?
Right. So there's a few different companies that have tighter ranges, which is great. And
just for my interest as well, could you name some, because I would love to.
I don't remember, as far as like a specific. I just know that if you go through training like I had as a nutritionist, you start to you're taught different ranges. So instead of this large range from like 1 to 6 on TSH for thyroid, it's much tighter. And so
if we do find something later on, I'm gonna add it to the show notes.
Sure. Yeah. The thing, so I could give you an example with iron and blood, for example, and this is really important. This will very possibly save lives. So with iron and blood, a lot of people, especially if they're women and they're menstruating, but this could be guys too. In general, if you're ever male or female, if you're ever told this at any point in your life, no matter what your situation is, I really mean this, you can apply this to any advice you ever hear around iron levels. If they say, hey, your results came back and you're low in iron and you're looking at blood, what's actually happening most of the time is you're actually so high in iron that the body's taking it out of the blood, where it's doing damage and causing damage to your veins, your capillaries, your endothelial function. It's being nicked. You can imagine little particles of metal like falling through the bloodstream, being pumped through the bloodstream and causing nicks. The body goes, oh, too much of that, and sticks it where? Sticks it in the tissues. So, because it goes, it's too important, the blood, the pH, all these things. The only problem is that raises the hallmark of aging, which is called oxidative stress for people. So that leads to going gray faster. That leads to low energy and chronic fatigue. So if you've ever fatigue is one of the number one things people come to us for. They're like, I want more energy, whether they're fit or overweight, either way. They're like, yeah, I just want more energy, it's true. That's really what I mean by nutrition becoming personality, is when we get these things right, and we have an iron recycling system in the body that most people have no idea about. It seems like even a lot of the top doctors in the world that are otherwise genius, they just aren't ever taught this, and they do not know that over 95% of the iron that is consumed is recycled.
Mm.
So
Same
I give blood as a guy every 2 months, and based on my levels in hair, and I feel better, I feel lighter, I feel less angry. Iron is an archaic masculine element, and it really is like just anger. When it's and you see that a lot with carnivore diet often. You really see that both men and women, they're just like snappier, their personality does shift, and I've seen it. And it doesn't mean that that's not right for a while, but I view that as an elimination diet. I'm sorry if that hurts someone's feelings, but all diets eventually fail. And the reason why is because you're eating a slice of the pie. If you're eating a narrow food group, that narrow food group has, by definition, again, don't be upset with me, this is just the reality of it. I'm sorry, I wish it was easier, but that narrow slice of the pie has certain micronutrients in it, which is really the reason why you eat food in general, besides it just tastes good. So imagine you're eating a lot of iron, you're getting some manganese, you're getting some magnesium, you're getting some et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you're getting too much of this stuff and not enough of this other stuff. And what I really want to impress in people's mind, we see this in hair testing, is in that at-home kit they can ship to you, is we see ratios. So we see iron to copper ratios, and we see zinc to copper ratios, and that all tells us about the person's emotional state, just like sodium to potassium, calcium to magnesium, so on and so forth.
That's what I wanted to know as well about copper specifically, because how copper, magnesium, iron, how the entire, let's call it a funnel, is working.
Yeah.
So also zinc. So if you have low levels of copper, you cannot supplement with copper, correct?
No, you can. You can if it's bioavailable. Yeah.
Okay.
Like we have a copper supplement that a lot of people use to help with this problem when they have iron overload, because without copper, your utilization of iron is not possible. And that's essential because iron is the only element that carries oxygen throughout the body.
And even testing your bloods for copper is ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, and
we can do it. The blood test is like €100.
We can do it so easily. We can do everything, test and consultation for like, I don't know, €250 or something, if people buy it on subscription. So because this is really ideally done quarterly, so that you get the map.
Yeah.
So we see copper, we see like 60 elements, and more importantly than all these different elements, we see the ratios of the most important ones.
Do you need to test the bloods with the hair, or is it enough just to do the hair?
No, you don't, because we're seeing, for example, if you have a low thyroid, so hypothyroid, we'll see that in hair. Dutch test is all around adrenal function. We'll see that in hair. And I've done all these tests and many others, spent more in testing than almost anyone I know, and evaluate all these different methods. And I gotta tell you that I've spent literally thousands and thousands of dollars many times and seen and gotten very marginal benefit beyond that, with the exception of also doing gut testing as well. So I'm a fan of doing gut testing too.
What kind of gut testing though?
I like GI map. Yeah, I think that's the one with the most research. I know.
Did you know about diagnostics, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Because I know a lot of other gut testing things. Are completely. It's like reading tea leaves, because there's no standards.
You should have a consultation with someone that's a genius in that area, and no matter if you're smart and you're very well educated in every other area of nutrition, if you don't know the inside out truly, if you haven't spent months doing consultations and learning, then you should pay for a consultation, because you'll get marginal benefit from not doing it. I tell people this all the time, and I think people they just get excited, they do the test, and anyway, our practitioners can help with that too, even privately. But I think that it's really valuable if you're going to start with one test and you have a limited budget. Do hair. You see the most. It's the whole periodic table, and we understand that's something we agree on. as a world society that these are the elements that exist on the planet. So if you do some other test and you ignore that, I mean, it's really dumb. Let's be honest. It's just dumb. Like, don't do it. You know, it's hubris. It's like when you think about it, it's, oh, I'll be fine. No, it's literally like being blindfolded on a rooftop 60 floors up, and it's windy and there's no guardrails, and it's like, here you go, here's the blindfold, you got to put it on, walk in a big circle, and try not to fall off, because you don't have the map, you don't know where you are in relationship. And gravity is the thing that we're worried about killing us there. Here, it's just entropy is increasing whenever you have your elements out of balance.
Because another big issue talking about elements out of balance is I see that there's a lot of videos on TikTok, on YouTube Shorts, on YouTube in general, Instagram, that people are recommending you the next amazing supplement.
Yeah.
But when your elements are out of whack, taking recommendations for the next amazing supplement, just buying something online, even if it's good quality, it might cause you more harm than good. I used to be the guy that everyone came to for supplement recommendations, but like I wouldn't dare recommending anything anymore just blindly.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Test, don't guess. We come back to that. Again, it's just the principles. Yeah. Well, you don't have to be knowledgeable about everything when you understand the principles deeply.
But the other problem here is that supplements are now regarded as another quick fix. First, the pharmaceutical industry, now it's not cool anymore. People are like, have waken up to the fact now they want quick fixes from supplements. Right. But where do you see that supplements fit in terms of a healthy lifestyle?
Right. So if you're watching this on camera, then what we figured out, in 2015 was, your red blood cells really are the distribution system in the body, and your red blood cells are, this big, and the particle sizes of the minerals are this big, and the size was about 8 times larger than your red blood cells. So you have to have a functioning digestive system for that to work. And then the particle size is like that we have is 1,000th of that size, so like a pin, a tiny little pinprick of that with electron driving force, so it gets into the cells. It's literally like dropping something from a rooftop. It falls, and in that same way, things get into the red blood cell, and then it's distributed throughout the body. And all the blood in the body circulates through the thyroid in about an hour and a half or so. So we're looking at improving function very quickly, whether it's building blocks for hormones. By the way, if you're a hormone doctor, please get into this, because you can't optimize someone's hormones, like take our course, please, because you can't optimize someone's hormones without the right building blocks. And I don't see, I give talks, London, here in Estonia, back in the US, and by a show of hands, I see a lot of people that do, work as a hormone doctor or a nutritionist that specializes in hormones. And if they're not spending time doing multiple hair tests each year, really I recommend one every 3 months with their people, then they're not optimizing the building blocks that are most fundamental. Again, the elements build everything, including even the macros, in some way, shape, or form at some point. So you think about that, it's like we have to have these things. So now it's just about testing for them, 1, and absorbing them, 2. And then testing again, and then altering your diet as best as you can. Like you said, the soil is very depleted though. So a good diet right now won't get us well, unfortunately. It will help, but it won't get us not to a place of optimal biochemistry.
And we shortly touched on heavy metals as well. So your hair tests show heavy metal toxicity, correct? And when you do find heavy metal toxicity, what is your approach to this usually?
Yeah, our approach is to use both minerals and binders. So we know the chemistry of certain minerals mean that certain heavy metals should mean that certain minerals should be used. For example, a lot of people have mercury, which is the most toxic, and you can push that out with selenium and zinc, and that's beautiful. And also you can be taking iodine to blow that off of thyroid receptors, and you can be taking a binder to help with not causing any sort of autoimmune reaction. So I really like binders as well.
What kind of binders?
We're actually developing one soon, but in the meantime, you can do a mix of activated charcoal, activated carbon, and zeolite. Silica as well is nice, which also helps with.
Yeah, I've mixed together all of them.
Yeah. So we'll do that, and then whenever you're mixing that, you want to make sure that you're not using something metallic. Unfortunately, you want to use something like wooden or plastic.
That makes so much sense right now. Yeah. And you want to get them food grade.
Yeah, food grade. Yeah,
otherwise
very
you're
important.
Gonna put more heavy metals in your body.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
But I remember seeing this. That was a while ago. There was this niacin sauna detox protocol that they used even on the 9/11 first responders when they had like very heavy metal toxicity to the point that they were developing Parkinson-like tremors. And I think they worked them up to like 5 grams a day over 30 days with the niacin sauna. And there were photos, we're going to find them and put them up here. There were photos of the firefighters after the sauna holding up a towel and was like blue, purple and blue from the manganese.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Be careful with that dose though, people. And work up slowly. I would start with something much lower, like 100 milligrams. Most people should be fine. 500 milligrams seems like a lot. You'll get like a painful amount of flushing.
It gets uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable at even 500 milligrams. Yeah. So we're talking.
And doing 5 grams over 30 days, that's extreme.
Yeah, exactly.
That is extreme.
Yeah.
So don't go there right away.
Yeah.
But going back to what you said before about binders as well. So anytime you're doing these detoxes, you have to take binders because if you're letting all the nasty, I'm going to call them chemicals. I don't know how taboo it is calling them chemicals. If you're releasing the toxins in your body, if you're releasing the toxins in your body, they're going to wreak havoc and cause mast cell problems and all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah, just autoimmune issues. It can just make things worse. So, the body stores these toxins in tissue whenever the body currently doesn't have the capacity to get rid of them. So when you start to push them out quickly through outside methods like sauna, it's good to support the body with both minerals that are going to come in and fill those pathways and activate and plug those gaps, so to speak, so heavy metals aren't there trying to activate, because they can to a certain extent. Certain heavy metals will activate. So you want to do that, and again, that protects electrostatically. And then also, you just bind so that you do absorb these things. And these are fulvic acid is nice, humic acid. These things can be good, and we have some of those nutrients in some of our supplements as well. I also really like upgraded tea, so for that reason, because we have some of that in our purified shilajit ingredient.
Oh, you also sell shilajit?
Yeah, we have that in as one of the ingredients. We use a purified one because every other form, and that's a trademark form that's clinically studied.
But it's not the pure shilajit then in its tar form, right? It's the active ingredient, right? The fulvic acid then you said,
no,
right?
No.
It's
everything. It's everything. But it's not just regular. It's from a form that is tested every batch for heavy metals as well, which is very important because shilajit on its own naturally occurring has some heavy metals.
Yeah.
So they're processing that out. It's the only one that I take, but I take that almost daily, most days actually. And then, we just to give people some tips, we did a actual clinical trial to prove what we're talking about is effective. And we did that on upgraded magnesium, which has the same delivery system.
What form is that?
I'll get to that. It's a great question. So upgraded magnesium has the same delivery system that all of our other products have, except upgraded T, which is our herbal product that boosts testosterone, nitric oxide, fertility. Staggering stat right now, but 1 in 4 couples at least they're trying to get pregnant can't. So we're actually doing a fertility trial on that product, and I know we'll see great benefit, as well as upgrade magnesium, which drastically increased deep sleep in the clinical trial. We saw as high as 250% increase in 14 nights from a participant.
That's very fast acting.
That's even in a night, we see a lot of people going from, 15 minutes to 30 minutes, 30 minutes to 45 minutes, 45 to 60, like night after night after night. But they went in this example for 1 hour to 2.5 hours would be the 2.5%, 2.5x increase. And then REM sleep went up 160% for a participant. Then our averages were high. Over 50% improved in like 6 categories, which is basically everything we measured. Things like time to fall asleep, ability to stay asleep, time to fall back asleep if someone woke up. This is all measured on the Oura Ring, which is super accurate. And we got baseline comparatively too, so it doesn't matter anyway. And that was done by a third party that had no interest, and also placebo controlled fully, so completely blinded. So it was like they took placebo for 2 weeks, that washed out, then they took the magnesium or vice versa. And depending on the participant, it was all mixed up. So yeah, it was absolutely wild.
And this is something very few supplement companies do actually, to show their efficacy.
I actually don't know of any. Maybe there's some. Actually, I can think of one other company ever that's done it, and it was for like a hair product or something. But this is. I mean, it's drastic. So our delivery system is evidence there, and I use my background as a chemical engineer to figure that part out. And with that really, we did that so that, you can look at any of our other products and understand that the absorption is going to really be there enough to actually improve these deficiencies that people are seeing in their hair analyses. And, we have consultations to support that too. So the form actually doesn't, it's just like food. When your body gets magnesium from food, when you think about it, it doesn't ask for a certain form ever, and it doesn't ask for multiple forms, certainly. And I recognized that actually about 14 years ago.
In what form is magnesium inside food even?
Right, exactly. Elements, just elementally.
Is it elemental?
And then you're going down, and the body's breaking it down to an atomic level. So really it was about getting particle size really small to match that, and then having it really stable. So our products are stable for years and years and years. That's why we come to a show like this and we encourage people to buy a year's worth.
So is there a publicly available form, or is that proprietary?
It's not the form so much. So it's the process. I mean, we have to write on the back, nanomagnesium, but we created this category called stabilized nanominerals. And, plenty of other companies, and I don't know what their process is. I can't speak to that. They'll talk about using this word that we started using a long time ago, but all I can say is I can only speak to ours. But we bind it with chloride after. So on the label, it looks a lot like magnesium chloride, but it absolutely is going to be a different result than if you took magnesium chloride and you took ours. So, and that's why it rockets you into deep sleep, and that's why people say they start dreaming again.
Because if I just, without hearing this, if I just saw a supplement say magnesium chloride, I would not buy that supplement.
Right. Yeah. And it says like on the supplement facts, there's only so much room and there's only so much we can legally say there. So we'll say, nano magnesium chloride, and it's upgraded magnesium, which was clinically studied. And that'll be in another product, or it's in several products. It's an upgraded mood, which has our lithium in it, because, and this is important for anxiety, for the people are experiencing, because lithium is tied to both, unfortunately, suicide and depression. So they found in groundwater studies that the areas that had the lowest amounts of lithium, and you can look the study up, it was done in the US a while ago. It was very clear though, they had the ones that had low levels of lithium had the highest rates there. So with that understanding, we know that, in the past couple of years, just all the stress that people have gone through with isolation it's only made that worse. It's only made their burn rates of these things go up. So it's very, very essential supplement that I also recommend.
But what about, we talked before that not all supplements are the right supplements for everybody. Does the same apply in any shape or form to minerals as well? That sometimes you wouldn't want to be taking certain minerals?
Good question. Really, when you think about if you can visualize receiving your results, having someone go over it, that's what you're going to need, you personally, but also you right now. That would have been different than 3 years ago, and certainly different when you're struggling with what you're struggling with. And it'll be different 3 months from now when you're healthier and you've been on this protocol. Things change. Case in point, a good friend of mine, Natalie Jill, we took her deep sleep from 16 minutes a night, famously, to 2 hours in about a week, with just upgraded magnesium and her hair analysis, which, she improved later. But by understanding, all right, well, you need more of this than some people do. And she was already taking magnesium supplements like most nights. So it wasn't that she wasn't taking it. But she immediately started doing more. So I was like, hey, make sure you test again in 3 months and we get a new map, right? Because it's a lot like, we're here in Estonia, it's like trying to drive to a neighboring country and looking at the map once. And it's like good luck. Like we're likely to go anywhere as we are there.
You are. I'm easy for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if you know the roads,
yeah, exactly.
But imagine, right? You go an hour down the road in any direction, and everyone has to look at the map, otherwise they don't know where they are. And you think about that, and you're like, wow, okay. So apply that to health, because how we do one thing is how we do everything.
Yeah. In the beginning,
in her case, she started doing something new that she had never done every day for 30 days. So she went like kite surfing, then she went hot air ballooning, then she went rock climbing, then you can imagine her nutrient levels of other things went up too. But she was sleeping well finally, so she spent less time in bed. She got over 3.5 hours back per night, because her time in bed went from about 11 hours to about 7 hours. And so we calculated, we did the math. She's 50 then. By the time she was 70, she's going to save 3.14 years of her life, or 57 days a year, or 26 hours per week. So a day a week. And that's literally how much time she's getting back.
That is impressive.
So good return on investment. She was making like $1 million a year. So the benefit of that was even higher than some people. But no matter what you're making, suddenly you get healthier, you make more money, and it's really hard to thrive financially if you don't have energy.
Yeah, and it just helps your thinking and all around energy and drive and focus. Because I've now been listening to these history shows. Finally, I'm getting into history, and the one common theme that I notice with all these
energy.
Exactly. Yeah. High energy individuals.
Napoleon.
Exactly.
Ridiculous amounts of energy.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
So high energy and high focus and high drive, but it stems from energy.
Yeah.
And in the beginning of this conversation, you talked about your mother, and I know that she is the reason you also started researching these things, supplements, and you started your company.
Yeah.
So let's circle back to that, and like, how did you start Upgraded Formulas? And
I mean, it was that, and then it was also having memory issues towards the end of college, and just noticing that I became very clear on this thing that we're just talking about now, which is energy. And wow, it became so clear to me that with an average amount of energy, you'd have a pretty average life. And, you'd be able to like do the job, but then you'd be done after work or something, versus enough to learn and apply yourself and really go for it and build a company like I've built. So that was a long process. It took many, many years. I researched for about 7 years, and I've had the company for a little over 7 years now. So it's
a difficult market as well.
It was a lot difficult market, but now we have people like Vision at Mind Valley that are talking about this just for free and saying, hey, look, these are some of my favorite supplements that I take every single day. And we've actually won over a lot of the top entrepreneurs in the world and a lot of the top, really all the top people in health. So now it's just about spreading the word. We have the clinical trials. We don't need to convince anyone, form what I do. I don't need anyone's opinion anymore. And we also have ridiculous testimonials that are so good that honestly we can't even legally publish some of them. They're so freaking good. So we actually can't.
Oh.
So we have to tone it down or whatever. But yeah, I mean, basically when people try our stuff, they experience benefit and they get better, and I'm really happy about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, feels very fulfilling, and I want other people to feel fulfilled in their unique mission here in the world, and that really is dictated through energy, like we're talking about. And no matter where you are, if you have more energy, you'll enjoy life more, you'll make more money, you'll have a better relationship. A lot of fights often come, whether it's friendship or romantic relationships, when people are tired. Oof. Really bad,
Good point.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna now start wrapping up, and just for the audience, if you want to do something on a budget, let's say you don't have the means to do hair testing, not 3 times a year, definitely. What is the number one thing that people should focus on if they want to be a high energy individual or regain their energy?
I would say, first of all, think about where you're spending your money, because even the people on the budget can save up and afford to do this a couple times a year. This is what I find, because they say that, but then they're spending money on cigarettes, and they're spending money on beer, and they're spending money on
perfumes,
just crap, just perfumes,
phthalates in the perfumes,
extra clothes, even if it's cheap clothes that they're gonna throw away. It's literally go inward, meditate, realize everything we talked about today, re-listen to this podcast, really get it in your mind front and center. Get a clear picture of it, and you'll manifest the ability to do it. And honestly, I couldn't have created a more cost-effective system that's effective. And I would say, you have to take something like upgraded magnesium nightly if you're going to sleep well.
So that's your number one to go.
That's the number one. We have many other supplements, 25 or so, but everyone needs that, some amount of it. Yeah, because the soil doesn't have it, and it's, when you think about it, again, periodic law, it's used for the energy production in every single cell. And if you don't have enough of it, what do you think those cells are doing? Really, imagine that. It might seem woo-woo, but close your eyes, try to put your mind inside those cells. Are they happy when they don't have what they need? Happy. They're starving. They're actually starving. They're starving, and those cells, when they're not happy, that is what we call a lack of ease, aka dis-ease. And the opposite's true too. So what's really expensive is disease and low energy, and that comes from chronic low energy states.
That I agree with. So avoiding disease, being preventative, that's your biggest trick, biggest saver of money, because treating disease is expensive.
Oof.
From experience.
Yeah, so expensive. And that will, if someone thinks they're struggling financially, wait until they suffer through something like that. Yeah. And then, that's the number one bankruptcy in the U.S. and probably most countries is healthcare cost.
Yeah.
And you look at the most healthy people, and they don't go to doctors. Only in emergencies, right?
Yeah.
For things that are accidents, basically.
Same here, completely.
But not, yeah.
And on that note, finishing up, where can the audience find you? Where can they check out your stuff? What websites should they visit?
Sure. The site Upgraded Formulas is the best place. So that's upgraded with an ED and formulas with an S. And this is really my love letter to the world. You know, if I could make it free, I would. But this is, you also understand after some point that people value what they pay for, and they might go, oh, I don't have money for that, and then they buy like a designer purse or something. And you're like, you're not serious about this yet. So I think life brings suffering to us until we get serious about it in one area or another. But you know, this is the bottom of the pyramid. If you want wealth, if you want relationship, balance, if you want anything, you have to do what we're talking about here, which is health. People spend money on their homes, their pets. Their health is really the place to start, because you get healthy for others, not just yourself. So I'm really passionate about that and really clear on that. So I hope that comes across as a, hey, you know, like, listen, hopefully this is just a give for people and they understand that. But, you know, really, I think selling you on the idea is necessary, because to not do this is just like wasting time, which to me, you know, if a year goes by, that's really the biggest loss. Another year, you're in the same place. You could have fixed it. Now you don't remember the conversation. Now you don't remember what to do. It's like, just take action now. Just do it. You know, figure out a way to make it work. And I think you'll see the results. So that's everything you can find on the website, and you can find social links. You can find me on Google and things like that. So
awesome. Great having you on, man.
On Instagram, on YouTube. Yeah. So
awesome.
yeah.
Thanks,
pleasure.
Man.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks.
Yeah.